So Andy was happy, everything was, going on. He gave me a short, detailed story on his business was losing, you know what I mean? He hadn't been able to collect money. It was very hard for him on his own going around some of the dive shops because there was a lot of threatening young guys, sometimes in the shops that would take the gear from him, and he would end up losing, not being paid and stuff. And he says, I know, he says, in the beginning, like, I was kind of using you like an enforcer, he goes, but he says, I did need help, but I give a fuck, Andy, you know what I mean? He says, you're paying me. I said, I fucking don't care, mate, at the end of the day. And I says, it's always better if there's two people doing this, So, and also we could split up and go different ways and cover a bit more territory as well. So he was absolutely bursting at the seams. I think Andy now probably had collected the guts of about 50 grand in the few weeks him and I had been together, and that was more than enough to sort his debt and pay his keep his plane in the air, pay Jeff, because he told me that Jeff had been working for him for a couple of months now with no money and stuff like this. And he said he was kind of surprised that Jeff stuck with him, and he was very grateful. And I says, look, Andy, I didn't know this, mate. I said, I'm glad that things have got straightened out for you. You know what I mean? He was still able to pay me, my 1,500 plus 500 every time I collected money. I think Andy was still married at the time, and he still had a couple of kids, so he was still paying money to his fucking ex or his estranged missus and stuff, alimony or whatever the hell it is. You know what I mean? And she was fucking shafting him, which I didn't realise at the time either, because Andy never really mentioned her. So she was still making money from him, he was still paying off, Daycore, Scuba Pro, all these, Forte, Ziegel, all these other companies, that Andy had gotten scuba gear from, which these other dive shops wanted, and he was providing for them. So Andy was taken from Peter to pay Paul and just barely scraping by, but he never mentioned anything. He never complained about it. He never cried about it, and that was the first time that I'd known that was happening for him. So Andy was just literally happily over the moon and stuff, and he was just everything was just back on track for him again, and I think him being saddened with Tom's loss kind of just added to the just immense weight of bullshit that he was carrying on his shoulders, and not knowing kind of which direction to go in. So it kind of made me happy a little bit to know that I'd helped him out, and I'd helped him get back on track a little bit, and was making a bit of money off him as well at the same time. So it was definitely like a hand wash hand type of thing, and I was really, really glad to see for Andy to tell me that, because I didn't know it at all. I was oblivious to the whole fact that he possibly was fucking gonna lose everything, lose his plane, which was his bread and butter. He'd given me a car which Andy could have taken and sold, for 3 or 4, maybe 5 grand or whatever back then, for that car, because that car was a really, really good car, and it was only a couple of years old with low mileage on it, and he could have taken that and sold that and paid his debt, but he gave me the car because I was stuck in his house, which showed the kindness that was actually that Andy was made of. We all had good and bad days. I just never really bothered about anybody else's bad days, to be honest. They weren't my business, unless I was directly involved in it in some way, or I'd caused that problem. I fucking didn't care about other people's bullshit. But it was different with Andy, because as I say, he took me up to his house. I didn't pay rent, I didn't pay rates. He fucking bought me food, even though he was in debt. He was still fucking, he would give me 20 or 30 bucks if I bought something to replace that for me. And if there something was broken, he'd fucking go and buy a new one. If the toaster was broken and I didn't say nothing, and he came down to do toast, oh, was the toaster broken? Yeah, why didn't you tell me? Nah, you know what I mean? Fucking go out and buy a new one, that type of thing. So when he was doing that, when he was in debt, and I fucking didn't, and he was paying me 2 grand, fucking, 1,500, wages, or 500, going out, and he was still paying me a wage, and he was fucking still in debt, and I didn't fucking know, and I actually fucking felt quite shit. So But still, I was there to make money. You know, I looked at myself as not being a charity, but I didn't realise that he was going through that. But now, you know, he was flush. He had a good bit of money. You know, he could keep his plane in the air. He could pay Jeff. You know, he could pay his, you know, his. He could pay off his scuba gear to the different companies. He could keep his car with fuel. You know what I mean? And he could, you know, get a bit of money in the bank and all this type of stuff. I didn't realise that he was just being pulled this way and that way for money from everyone. Anyway, now things had locked up, and he got another 6, you know, another 6 new clients, which was good. Which is basically the island, and your man at the that guy Mark at the Blue Water Dive was giving Andy a good write up, which probably helped him get those other ones as well. So Andy was he was like a little piggy in shit, and he sat down and he had a glass of orange juice, showed me the paperwork, asked me if I would go over the paperwork at some point when we got back to Miami, and if I would do the errands of picking it up, while he went off and yep, no problem at all, whatever you need, Andy. You know, that was good enough. So plus we had Belize to go down to, we had the Keys to go down to again. Andy would be coming back to Bermuda in a week or 2, week and a half maybe, after coming from Belize. Because we'd have to put the orders in for the gear. Some of it might not be in, and you know, we'd go down, we'd pick it up, we'd pack it, we'd fly back again, and we'd do the same thing over and over again. So I was pleased with that. You know, the money was coming in, Andy was happy, Andy was flush, and he was smiling again. So I sat, drank my coffee. Andy headed off to his room, had a shower, changed his t-shirt and his shorts and stuff, and we were going to rendezvous about 10:30 for an evening meal with Lauren, and that would be great. So because people just ate meals at all times of the day over in Bermuda or the Caribbean, you could get food at literally any time. There wasn't, I mean, even though some restaurants had a set time in it, a lot of the restaurants out there and a lot of the hotels knew that lots of people didn't have set meal times. They just didn't come in and say, okay, at 6 o'clock I'll have my dinner, you know, or 7 o'clock I'll have this. It was just different times. So they just catered to the people when they wanted to eat. So Andy went off to his room, and he had a shower and stuff, and slapped on a bit of the Old Spice. And I sat at the table. I ordered another coffee, and Lauren appeared, and she had on a little tight top with her huge boobies kind of sticking under her chin. Lauren's fucking kitty little head picked up, and Lauren's when she seen Lauren, and she had just had an affinity for her, and she asked could she sit down. I said absolutely. I told her Andy was in, you know, in the room getting ready and stuff. And she says, oh, I'm sorry, I'm a bit early. I says, no problem at all. It was the table that she sat at, obviously, so it was her table. And I says, oh, you know, I'm sitting at your table. And she's like, no, it's not anybody's table. She says, I prefer to sit here because it's got a nicer view. She says, it's in the middle of everybody, you know what I mean? And it's a nicer view. And so she sat down, and she ordered a Metropolitan drink, I think it was called. Not sure what was in it, but she ordered a Metropolitan. I think they were pretty big back then. I got that for on my tab, and she was sitting playing with Kitty, and she started talking and asking me about myself and what I did, and you know where I came from, and was she okay with me asking these questions? And I was like, yeah, you know, how long had I known Andy, you know, all this type of stuff. So she was kind of fishing a little bit, you know. And I wasn't going to talk about Andy too much because I didn't really know Andy that well. I didn't know his life story. I just knew the little bits and pieces that Andy had told me, but it wasn't my place to tell her that, you know what I mean? She obviously liked the guy. And when she asked me questions about Andy, I would just say, you know, Lauren, I said, you know, I don't really know Andy, you know, probably as well as you do. I've only known Andy, you know, a few months. I just think that if you know, want to really know anything about him, you should ask him, because it's not for me to say that. And she took it in a nice way. She understood that. So she kept the subject on about me. I told her a little bit about where I grew up, where I was from, you know, what I had did back home. and how I got to be in Belize.